Good morning everyone, and welcome to a very promising and slightly drier start to the sunrise safari. I'm very excited for the morning that we have planned up ahead. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jamie and I have Jeandre on camera with me this morning, and driving around on Wendy is Scott and VM the wildebeest. And it's so nice to see the sun finally peeking through. Very exciting stuff. Now, yesterday evening, if you weren't watching the sunrise safari, the sunset safari, VM and I were sitting in an elephant sighting when all of a sudden 2 little hyena cubs popped out. And we knew that we had to be very close to the den because it was one of the smallest cub, the youngest cub, had come to investigate both the elephants and our noise and had come to say hello. And they led us straight back to this termite mound that is off to my left, which is where they have moved their den site to. Now, I've just pulled in slowly, I've just arrived. So far I haven't seen any hyena, but the entrance that they use is just on the other side. So let us head round and see. But that's one of the amazing things about these live safaris, is you just never know what to expect. You can be sitting in an elephant sighting and all of a sudden a load of hyena cubs pop out to come and say hello. It was very definitely a nice surprise for us last night. And not only are we live, but we are interactive. So if you guys are new viewers, let us know, please. We'd love to hear from you. And you can also send through any questions that you might have, and you can do that on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv. We do love to hear from you. And the questions are definitely one of my favorite parts of these safaris, because it gets us thinking about things that we wouldn't necessarily have thought of without them. Scoot around here and see if there's any action out and about. Hello little one, there's just a nose popping out. Give me a moment and I'll be able to show you too. They've picked, as VM said, they've moved to a nice neighborhood. Definitely stepping up in the world. It's a nice open den, so you can't get too close, which I think might even have been their intention. Lots of logs around to protect it. Here we go, we've just got one little nose sticking out there. Good morning. And that looks like the youngest cub to me now. Cannot believe how it's grown since we last saw them. It's looking very stocky and solid, and apparently rather sleepy this morning. Just sniffing the air. It was this little one that ultimately led us to this den site. Such amazing news. Interestingly, yesterday when I was with these hyena cubs, I only counted 3 of them. I'm hoping there's a 4th one around as well. Now, for those of you who are joining us a little bit late and you haven't been following the progress of this hyena clan, there's one older cub who was born late December, and there's 2 younger ones, 2 siblings, and they were born in February, and then this little one who was absolutely minuscule and only a couple of weeks old when I started working at WildEarth in July. And the rate that hyena cubs grow is absolutely phenomenal. Their mothers have some of the most protein-rich milk in all of the mammals out here. And this little one's had a good start in life. Oh, you're gonna, yep. Heading down to investigate. Definitely the youngest cub. Look how spotty he's got since we last saw him. You'll notice that I have been quite gender neutral while I've been talking about these cubs. And that's because we're still in the process of figuring out males and females. It's very difficult with hyena, especially at this age. James and I both thought this was a female, but I'm sure one of the other presenters mentioned that they thought it might be a male. And I think we're just going to have to wait and see as time goes on. This is exciting news not only for us but also for the rest of the guides. So one thing I'm going to do now is call in the hyena den and let them know exactly where it is. Morning stations, I've relocated active Misikaya. It is maybe 100 meters south of the fire break on the western side of Aubrey's Road. My announcement was met with silence at the moment. I know that Andrew was interested in seeing them, so I'm going to try and contact him directly. Andrew? Morning, Andrew. Are you interested in coming to the Misikaya? It's quite far north on Aubrey's Road. It's about 50 meters in, but you'll see where my tracks go off-road. I'm here now. Copy that, no problem. If you aren't here by the time I leave, I'll leave a guarri branch or something in the road for you. Here we go, just letting him know how to find this place. And these hyena cubs are just too cute to not to share. So from a little hyena at its den site to a lilac-breasted roller in a hole in a tree and its little nesting site for the upcoming breeding season, let's head across to Scott and see what he's found, and I'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. Well, actually, welcome for the first time, shall I rather say. And we found another den site. It's very different to the hyena den that you're currently sitting at. And this is a beautiful bird called a lilac-breasted roller, poking its head out of its nesting cavity. Isn't this awesome? We've just seen it crawl in. And I wonder what its next move will be. Well, isn't it wonderful that we've got off to such a great start? Jamie at the hyena den, and myself and VM, who I'm teamed up with this morning, found this new nest site. I love finding the birds' nests, which are plentiful at this time of the year. And this one's going to be very easy to monitor. It's on Cheetah Cutline, just north of our southern boundary. And we came here looking for lion, but we haven't found them yet. But what we have found is this little interesting sighting that we couldn't resist sharing with you. Look at the colors here. Absolutely awesome. Great stuff, and we're not going to keep you here too long. We will send you back to Jamie now that this very pretty bird has moved out of its nest. But for those of you who have never met me before, I'm Scott, and it's good to be on safari with all of you this morning. We're going to continue north up Cheetah Cut Line, checking for any sign of lion coming back into Djuma or any other interesting animals along the way, but we are desperate to try and work out what's going on with the lion in this area. There's been a huge amount of change and dynamics over the last few weeks and months, and look forward to trying to get you into the right position to see a few more events unfold. Like I said though, we're going to send you back to Jamie as we continue our search, so see you later.
Welcome back. And the wonderful thing about this springtime season is all the babies that we get to see, including this little one. Now I think it's chewing on the hoof that we saw it with yesterday in the sunset safari. I believe that the hyena ran north into Buffelshoek a couple of days ago and dragged back part of that buffalo kill that the Birmingham boys had. I think that was maybe about 5 days ago. I tend to lose track of time out here, but that's probably where that hoof came from. Now, because there are a couple of older cubs who will be supplementing their diet quite heavily with meat from kills, the mothers are dragging bits back to the den site more regularly. And that also tends to give the hyena den site a certain pungent aroma, which I'm not smelling too badly yet. They obviously haven't been here long enough for that smell to accumulate. Oh, itchy ear. Heard some hippos off at Sydney's Dam. It's hard to believe that this is the same hyena cub that we were looking at only a couple of weeks ago. And Angie, I know, that used to be that little dark, chubby, clumsy furball, starting to get his or her adult colouring already. It really is quite phenomenal. It's hard to believe how fast this little one has grown. It's quite impressive to think, and I've noticed wandering around how stocky it's looking as well. Really stocky and solid, and before when we saw it, right in the beginning when we saw him, it was full of wrinkles and skin that looked far too big for his body. Now looking a bit more like a hyena. Still feeling a little bit shy though, tucked away. But yes, Lucy, who is from South Bend, Indiana, welcome to the Sunrise Safari. I'm also thrilled that we've managed to relocate this hyena den. I'd like to be able to claim credit for it, but really it was just pure luck. And the hyena cubs actually found us in the end. But still fantastic news and very, very exciting. And I like this den site that they moved to. Is slightly more open than the one at Gallagher Shortcut, although we are only probably about 700 meters away from that old den, if that. They haven't moved terribly far. But I think for them this is definitely a far better site. I mentioned yesterday that that old den site on Gallagher Shortcut was right next to a drainage line, very tucked away in dense vegetation, and I suspect that when we had that heavy rain about just over 2 weeks ago, I have a suspicion that that den became a little bit waterlogged by water draining into that drainage line. So I think the hyenas made a sensible decision in moving out into this open area. It's a little bit higher up, so the soil will be a little bit more drained. What's happening? Wonder what he spotted. Just sniffing the air, I think. Oh, going to go investigating. Peering hard off into a direction. Maybe hopeful that Mom is going to come back and provide some food. I need to reposition. There's something very interesting happening with the hyenas off to my right. I'm going to try and get us in without disturbing them. As I mentioned before, it's quite thick. Let's see if we can manage this. That's what that cub was looking at. I wondered why he was glancing so intently in that direction. Let's see what these hyenas are up to. One thing about this den site is it does involve 20-point turns at all approaches. Let me see how we're going to do this. It's going to be a little bit tricky, but let's go around this way. And while I do reposition to get us a view, we had a question from Rosanna about the hyena breeding season. Well, welcome Rosanna to the Sunrise Safari. It depends on the conditions of the female. They don't have a set breeding time of year, although it's not uncommon for females of the clan to have their babies around the same time. Just because then you can invest, you've got more members investing their attention on protecting the den. And usually a hyena mother will breed roughly once a year, or once every 2 years, usually having about 2 cubs at a time. Hello hyena, sorry. Here we go, we've got lots of individuals. What you up to, little one? Good morning. Good morning. Not the wheel, please. They are such curious little things. They always come up and say hello and try and sniff the tires. But quite often that sniffing of tires involves taking a chunk out of them. They have to be watched very, very closely. Here we go, we've got one of the older cubs. Now, yesterday evening I had a question about how big the hyena are and sort of compared to a dog breed that people might know. But have a look now with us, with the hyena next to our vehicle. I'm putting them at roughly the height of a large German Shepherd dog, but they're much bulkier. You can see how huge that head looks. Just being curious, coming to say good morning. Now, an adult female hyena can reach up to 60 kilograms, which is about 120 pounds. It's coming to say good morning to you, Jean-Ray. What you doing? Yeah. They really are absolutely the most wonderfully entertaining animals. Oh, goodness. Was that scary? Shame. Coming to investigate. That's actually an older, that's probably a sub-adult cub who came to say good morning. just reached adulthood and is sniffing away at the rest. Look how many hyena we've got. 6 of them, all crowded round. Oh, good. We have got all the cubs. I was worried yesterday, but there we go. Here comes the 3rd of the older cubs. That's good news. That's very, very good news. Oh, look at that! An entire warthog head. Marching away with it like a prize. That is so interesting. It's the first time I've ever seen a hyena wandering around with a full-on warthog head. This is what's so important about finding an active den site, is you just get to see all of this activity. A little bit of clan dynamics happening there. Making sure the cubs know their place. And we've seen these cubs get quite considerably bullied. Making those squealing, begging noises. Oh, just got a whiff of the warthog head as well. Look at them go. See those tails up as a sign of excitement. This is all very gentle. It doesn't look gentle when we see those large teeth. Oh, shame. Oh. Trying to get away from the attentions of the younger adults. Let me shift around and reposition, and as I do that, let me once again call in on the radio to let them know what's happening at the hyena den. But let's get a view of them and the warthog head. Very interesting. That's pungent. No, hold on. I said warthog originally. I'm rethinking. That's not a warthog, that's part of a hippo. You know, I think that might be a hippo mouth. Looks like it. Looks like the front end of a hippo. A young hippo, obviously, a baby. And that is interesting. That's very interesting. I wonder how they got hold of a hippo. Now, it's not impossible that they killed a baby by themselves. There's quite a few adults, and it is possible. We tend to forget, maybe if you're new to the idea of spotted hyenas, that they're actually very, very efficient hunters. No, it is still a warthog. It is definitely still a warthog. Seeing its face now when they've picked it up, it's definitely a slightly decomposed warthog. Running around with it like a prize. Oh, Mom's up to sort things out. They've got too close to her baby. Oh, hyenas running everywhere. And then just one cub still remaining. Oh, fun things about filming hyenas, they're all over the place. There's lots of activity, we can hear them vocalizing like that. I'm hoping that they're going to come back. I can't reposition at the moment just because we've got so many visitors around the vehicle. This particular individual is very curious this morning, coming right up to say hello. Accompanied by a wet dog smell, which combines beautifully with the smell of the warthog head. Ooh, birds are so noisy this morning. Those are the magpie shrikes you can hear. Okay, they've all moved out from around us, so let's reposition once again and see if we can get a nice clear view of what they've been up to. As I said, this den site is the place of 20-point turns. But while I do that, I mentioned earlier trying to compare hyena to a sort of domestic breed of dog to get a size reference. And Neil, you were wondering if they're in the dog family, if hyena fall into the dog family. And interestingly enough, no they don't. They might look canine-ish. They've got that look about them with their feet and the way their legs are structured. But in fact, they are neither part of the dog nor the cat family. It's a completely separate family, known as Hyenidae. Evolutionary-wise, probably closer to cats, just a little bit in terms of their evolutionary history, but that doesn't make them cats. It just means that they're that much closer in terms of their evolutionary line. Here we go, we've got most of them again in a nice open patch. The 3 cubs are looking nice and healthy, the 3 older ones. One of them is noticeably smaller than the others. There's a good chance that that one that's in the middle of the 3 cubs is a male, just looking at size comparison. And for those of you who don't know, with hyena, the females are much bigger than the males, and I'll carry on that conversation topic in a moment. I just want to hop onto the Game Drive channel. Aubrey for Jamie. Morning, Orbs. Yeah, this Musikai is very active. There's all 4 Mapimpana out, a couple of the adults as well. There's space for at least 2 movers here. Good morning. Hey guys, coming through. Aubrey's just asking for directions. I'm about maybe 100 meters south of the fire break on the western side of Aubrey's road. You'll see where my tracks go off-road. We've just got little patches of fur sticking up on the other side of the vehicle. All coming to say hello and investigate. They are such entertaining little animals. Now I mentioned that I thought, bear with me as I keep looking at them out of the corner of my eye to make sure I don't lose the rubber cap that sits in the middle of the wheel. They love that. It makes for a perfect chew toy. So Andre, just keep an eye on the mischievous things that are around us. But I mentioned that females are much bigger, and you start to see that even at the young age that these middle cubs are at. So even at 7 months old, you can start to see the size discrepancy. And it's probably only the one and only truly matriarchal society that we get out here, or animal social system, because the females are completely dominant. They're bigger, they have very high levels of testosterone, and no matter what rank a female has within the clan, and they do have a very strict hierarchy system, no matter what rank they are in the clan, they're still going to be higher than the highest ranking male of the area. So what will happen is we'll get den sites like this, where you get all of the individuals coming through to visit, and with babies as well. And the females who don't have cubs will pop in every now and again, and they'll all not necessarily be related to each other, but there is a much stronger chance. So you'll get maybe 1 or 2 matriarchal lines within a clan, so unrelated females and their offspring, and then a couple of unrelated males who come through every now and again and look for a sneaky chance to mate with the females. And it is quite a tricky business, because the females tend to be quite aggressive towards incoming males. Oh, hyenas everywhere. What are you guys doing? I get the distinct impression there's about to be teeth involved around the area of my wheel well, which makes me slightly nervous. It's not unheard of for them to have a chew. And if you think about it, they're very, very intelligent animals, so they're investigating the world around them with the only mechanism they have, which is teeth. Sorry guys, I'm just going to Aubrey, if you come from the fire break south on Aubrey's Road, if you go maybe 50 meters down the road, you should get my tracks going off to the west into the block. Just directing Aubrey in. He's struggling to find us. I'm not sure if that's his audio. It doesn't sound like it. That sounds like a tractor to me. And there we go. We get one of the older females. A lot of nicks and scratches in her ears. Look how beautiful she is in her own way. And just a little bit of background to hyena dynamics for those of you who are unfamiliar with them. Now, the females have quite a strict ranking system. Sorry, I've just seen Aubrey. Yeah, Aubrey, I've got your visual. You can start coming north. You should see the big termite mound there. Aubrey's just making his way in. Now, hierarchy in hyenas is hereditary. So if we were to have the matriarch, which we suspected was the mother of the young cub. Oops, sorry, game drive channel's still going. I will finish my thought in a moment. Yeah, at the moment they're not all at the den site, so we could have 3 vehicles here. One at the den and then 2 more with the rest of them, just off to the north of the den. It is quite a thick block. Okay, now where was I? Just chatting a little bit about hierarchies within hyena clans. Now, Lisa G, good morning, welcome to the Sunrise Safari. You were wondering if we have the matriarch who has then passed on her high status to a cub, such as we suspect with that little cub, with the youngest cub. Now, if we have that kind of scenario and the matriarch is killed, what happens then to the cub at that sort of age? Because she's inherited her mother's status, but now her mother's no longer there to defend and keep that status going. Now, in that particular circumstance, there is a chance that that cub would be slightly lower ranking than it would normally be if the mother was alive. It depends, of course, as well as if it survives. There's a chance that it could, but probably not. The hyena are not really likely, the other mothers around the den site, they're less likely to really look after it or invest any time, and will probably actually start to bully it without the mother's defense. And so there's a good chance that if the mother was killed at the age of the youngest cub, that little cub would probably die. For the older cubs, the twins and then the slightly older that we suspect is a male cub, if their mothers were to die, they're probably at the age where they stand a much higher chance of survival. Now, a lot of our hyenas have just disappeared off. They've melted into the bushes. It's incredible to see. You can hear Audrey coming through. I'm just going to try and reposition. And just let them know that the hyenas have moved around a little bit. Can't see any individuals towards the den. Let's do another Austin Powers style turn. Hyena are keeping us busy this morning. That's why it's so important to be able to sit and observe an active den site. You get so much insight into the way that the hyena interact with each other. Now, I mentioned before that I think spotted hyenas are my favorite predator out here. And I've got a couple of reasons for that. One is their curiosity, but the other is their incredible intelligence that they show in terms of problem solving and communication. In that respect, they really are quite phenomenal. I'm just going to once again get hold of Aubrey and let him know. Yeah, Aubrey, just to let you know, just as you arrived, they've started getting mobile northwest. I'm going to try and stay with most of them, but there was the youngest Mapimpan at the den. Okay, let's try and loop around and stay with them. Unfortunately, my game drive channel is not working terribly well, so I can't quite get through to Aubrey to let him know what's happening here. It's coming out as rather crackly. Try and loop around without driving over any baboon's tail either. stopping for a moment. We've got one of the hyena cubs. Peering after the adults. I don't think they're going to go too far, but it is a very thick block. So if they go further in, then we might have to return to the den site and just wait for them to come back. They're at that age where they're ranging around, just exploring the area, these older ones. The little one will stick quite close to the den. All tucked away in quite thick vegetation. I think for the moment, let me try and reposition. While we do take that moment to reposition so I can get us a nice clear view of these adults lying down, let's head across and see what Scott's up to, and I will catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone, and sounds like you're having a wonderful sighting with Jamie at the hyena den. Let's hope she can keep up with them as they've moved off. But again, big well done to her for relocating on that den site, and now we can get back into the swing of things and work out who's who and what's what with that clan. It's so difficult to know who is who and who the alpha female is. We have our speculations and theories, seem to think we know what's going on, and then we lose track of the den side for a couple of weeks, and then it's difficult to keep our finger on the pulse. Anyway, Jamie's on it, so that's good news. I'm just checking. There's a strange shape in a marula tree kind of sitting upright, and it's just these strange shapes that you need to look for when trying to spot animals. Let's see if I can move the vehicle forward a bit. I don't think VM's going to have a good angle. Let's just try though. You see the marula that's at like 8:30, VM? It's to the right. Yeah, I don't think we're going to have a good angle from there. We'll have to move forward a bit. Just keep coming in like that. You can see I can't get to a little gap. Oh, there it is. That little funny, strange shape. But it looks like it's just a branch poking out on the left of the marula tree, and it's not what I was hoping it was. I was hoping it was a leopard sitting up there with a kill. I'm still actually not convinced I know what it is though. Let's try and get a little bit closer and get to the bottom of this, because I can't be entirely sure I know what it is just yet. A lot of vegetation in the way, which is making it tricky. Let's see if I can't get a clear view from the road. And it's a branch. I can tell from this angle that it is a branch. So we are going to continue. Good news, 2 male cheetah have been found. They're not too far from our eastern boundary. So let's hope that they veer west. They are on the move at the moment, and they're mobile north and kind of west, so there is a chance they could pop onto our property, and it's been quite some time since we have seen any cheetah. There are not nearly as many of them here as the lion and the leopard. So that's why I'm going to continue lurking around this eastern boundary in the hope that they pop up. There's been no further sign of any other animals here. That's not to say they're not around, it just means that I haven't seen any clues or footprints or tracks in the ground. What a beautiful misty morning it is. And I don't think we're going to have any trouble with drizzle or precipitation today, which is also good news. Buds. Absolutely awesome. Popping out of the silver cluster leaf. New look like hundreds of tiny little LED bulbs glowing. Beautiful. And while we stopped looking at this fresh green growth, you can appreciate a lot of bird song. So the bush is alive this morning, and that's great news. But we're going to continue now after that little break. And it's so useful to stop and appreciate the smaller things, because so often while you stop looking at them, you get information as to what else may be going on out here. I made a prediction last night at the fireside chat that by the end of the week we would have had a wild dog sighting. Well, we'll see again, because I can't even remember when last we saw wild May. As in May, all the packs that we did see intermittently had found some den sites and various properties surrounding Djuma and quite far from Djuma. So I don't think we have seen them since they were dead, although we may have had one brief glimpse of them. A pack from the south of us that came up on towards the Arathusa airstrip. I think James had a sighting of them, but it was months back. And they're such wonderful animals to see and to follow. High action, high adrenaline sports following wild dogs. They move incredibly quickly, so that's something we all need to get ready for. My 15 animals, 12 little pups, and 3 remaining adults from the pack of what was 5. Oh, thank you. I'm sure I just saw something. Oh, I forgot to plug my earpiece back in. Quick click, quick click. We need to send you across to Jamie. See you shortly.
Welcome back, and there's been some interesting activity. I actually haven't repositioned at the moment, just because the hyena are running all around us. It's actually quite difficult to pick a position that makes for a good visual. Just a few moments ago there was a little bit of cub bullying, but they've disappeared off into the thick block to my right. There's a lot of running around. Suckle. There you go, trying to get into mum there. We can. They're just running around a lot, and I'm not going to cause too much disturbance by trying to follow them. But let's see if we can get a slightly clearer look at this mother and her cub suckling away in the early morning. gonna stop here for the moment. It's very thick in there and there's a lot of monkey orange, which makes quite a lot of noise when you drive over it. I don't want to disturb them in any way. Let's just listen to that cub making begging sounds. Can you hear those soft little whimpers? Chittering away. I think got what it wanted in the end, which is a chance to suckle. They are starting to get a little bit big. You can see struggling to get in there. I know it is tucked away behind some grass, but at this age, for these twins, sorry, not two twins, twins, at this size, only one of them can really suckle at a time. The other one's trying. That's definitely a begging sound. And as I said, only really one cub can have a chance to suckle at a time. The other one's lying down off to the right, waiting his or her turn. This is the one I think that is a male, just judging by how much smaller it is than its sibling. And if it is a male, then a lot of the time it's going to be outcompeted for access to mom. And you might even find that it's weaned a little bit sooner. Now, just on the subject of hyenas growing up and getting older, Kathy from Tennessee would like to know, at what age do they start heading out on the hunt with the adults? And they're definitely still too young. At about around a year and a half, maybe, they reach sub-adult stage and they might be able to keep up with the adults. If they are males, then they're already going to start hunting for themselves, because very soon they're going to become nomadic and independent from their clan and from their mothers. They get bullied to the point of leaving of their own accord. So for this little guy, if it is a little boy, which I suspect it is, he will be out of the clan a little bit sooner than his sister, probably at about a year and a half to 2. He'll start separating himself. But then for the cubs that are sticking with the clans, for the females, they'll be heading out with their mothers at about a year and a half to 2. Now, the interesting thing about hyena clan dynamics is they don't all live at the den site. Only the cubs live at the den, and the mothers of the cubs will come by to feed them, obviously, and to look after them. And then the rest of the clan will rotate through and visit, but they'll split off. They're quite happy to go off on their own or in groups of 2s or 3s and patrol the clan's territory and spend nights apart, only really gathering around the den site or gathering around a large kill. Or, if there's an interloping group of hyena coming through, because the clans are territorial, then the rest of the clan will come together and fight them off. But it's not as simple as they have a home that everybody in the clan lives at. It's only really for the cubs and their mothers. They've settled down quite happily. I'm still looking around to see if I can see the other cubs anywhere around. I've mentioned that these guys, spotted hyenas in general, are often misunderstood and seen as scavengers constantly, as dirty thieves. But in fact, they are very effective hunters. And Faro from Ontario in Canada would like to know whether they prefer old meat or would they prefer to hunt fresh meat for themselves. And it's a little bit more complex than that in terms of whether or not a hyena clan is predominantly scavenging or hunting. Depends on how many lions there are in the area and how many leopards and how many kills they are capable of stealing. So it just is very dependent on both the lion concentration as well as the type of habitat. These guys are suited for long chases over open areas. They've got incredible stamina. In terms of hunting and hunts initiated versus successful kills, they're probably one of the most efficient hunters out here. They've got a 70% to 80% success rate, whereas with lions, a lot of the time, especially for groups of just females, that sits at around 20 to 40%. So hyenas are much, much more effective at hunts and completing them. They don't have a preference, if I'm honest. They will kill and eat fresh meat, or they will be able to utilize, which is what makes them so cleverly adaptable. They can utilize and consume bits of carcass that no other animal out here can. So they're very, very well adapted in that sense. I have heard, or I have read, that hyenas sometimes have a preference for soaking kills in mud wallows or pools of water and getting the meat nice and soft and slightly rotten. And nobody can really offer up an explanation as to why they do this. It might be a way of keeping kills safe, away from lions coming through to steal them. And lions do. It does work in reverse. They will steal a kill from hyenas if they can. So it might be a way of keeping their kills safe, but nobody can really explain to me. I've never discovered exactly why it is hyenas stash their kills in water. But it definitely adds an extra level of aroma to a carcass if it's been soaked and marinated in muddy water. And I once saw spotted hyenas drag a zebra foal that they had killed into a dam, and they lay on top of it. They didn't eat it, they lay on top of it for a full day before they started eating it. But in terms of preference, what makes these guys so well adapted is that they're not fussy. They're quite happy to consume whatever it is they can find. Now we've got this quite contented picture of the hyena cubs suckling. And it's really, really nice to see, but we can see how almost ungainly that one particular cub looks while he's trying to suckle from his mother, just in terms of sheer size. Now, Donna Hall, you were wondering how long they suckle for. And the interesting thing that I read about that is it's actually dependent on the rank of the female. So the lowest ranking females will, they will wean their cubs off the milk far earlier than the dominant ones. So the higher ranking females, their cubs will be drinking milk right up until just over a year, possibly even up to a year and a half. Whereas the lower ranking ones will wean their cubs around possibly 6 months, although that's quite early, that's one of the earliest recorded cases, all the way to about 9 months old. And the reason for that is that the dominant females within the group have the best access to the carcass, they get the most nutrition, and they do, a lot of the time, they put in the least amount of effort in terms of if they walk up to a carcass that's been dragged to the den, the other hyena will immediately make space for them to have a moment to feed on it. So in terms of pup or cub rearing, the cubs who come from higher ranking mothers are much, much better looked after than those of lower ranking mothers. And the interesting thing about hyena dynamics is, although that system sounds unfair, it works out really well for them. But not only that, sometimes a matrilineal line, so the one group of females and her daughters, it might start to get smaller and smaller. Maybe a couple of them have died, maybe some of the cubs haven't survived to adulthood, and it is a tough world out here. And if that happens to the point that one of the lower ranking female lions is a little bit, consists of more hyenas, it's even possible to have a coup. So all of a sudden there'll be one massive fight from the lower ranking hyenas who just decide they've had enough of this, and they rise up and they actually displace the higher ranking females. It doesn't often happen, but it has been recorded to have happened. So really interesting. That's what makes them so fascinating. They're not bound by the set rules that you read about in books. There's all kinds of interesting exceptions to the rule. But at the moment, these hyenas lying here seem to be perfectly content. Nobody's moved a muscle, except for the little cub to have a look at what we're doing. Not too sure where the rest of them went. They disappeared off into the thick block. And shame, if this little one is a male, that he's probably spent his time being quite significantly bullied by his sister. But better to have a male and a female cub rather than two females, because with two female cubs the fighting and the competition is incredibly intense. If he is a male, then he would automatically assume a slightly subservient stance. But cubs do have to be taught their role in life and their place in life. So although that bullying that we saw a little bit earlier of the cubs, I wouldn't call it bullying, but teaching of the cubs that happened earlier with some of the adults, where they grabbed them and you heard those screams of begging sounds. Those are important lessons that they need to keep them within the clan hierarchy and to keep the clan functioning as it should. We have a question while we've got these wonderfully young cubs here, and we've seen a couple of the older females coming through. And Carol from New York, welcome to the Sunrise Safari. You would like to know how long hyenas live for. And I know of individuals that have lived, older females who've lived up to 16 years old, or possibly even older. I'm just double checking in my book to see what the longest one has ever been, but I know from sort of between 13 to 16 would be considered quite old for a hyena. And I think that in terms of the females will probably live longer than the males, just because they are bigger, they have less conflict, and they've got the protection of the rest of the clan. But yes, I'd say for a male, probably averaging 10 to 13 years. Females, I knew of one that had reached 16, but I think that was an exception rather than the rule. I'm looking to see in my book if I've got the information. The only thing I've just read is that females may put on weight for 10 years. So that's why when you see an older female, they look so absolutely enormous. Although we can't see too clearly, apart from the one cub's filling its belly from mom, Maggie in Australia, welcome to the Sunset Safari. Oh, Okay, Scott's got an interesting bird. Let's head across to him. Maggie, I'll get back to you later.
Welcome back, everyone, and just in time. Just in the nick of time, you got to see this male saddle-billed stork swallowing a little catfish that it caught. Awesome. It's actually the first time I've ever been able to share a kill that these animals have made with you. So that's exciting stuff. The last time one of these saddle-billed stork caught a fish eagle swooped down and ruined the whole scene. The saddle-billed stork dropped the fish and it swam away to safety, and the fish eagle and the saddle-billed stork both ended up empty-beaked. That was a small catfish that it managed to catch. You may have just got a tiny glimpse of it. I'm not too sure how much you did see, but I was playing around with it on the ground for a few moments before you got to us, trying to position it correctly. They need to swallow the fish head first. Oh, here comes the fish eagle, VM. Beautiful. Great camera work there. And you're a little bit late this time, Mr. Fish Eagle, or Mrs. Fish Eagle. But I'm glad, because it was out of this very same tree that it's perched in now that it flew down and disturbed the saddle-billed stork on their last kill. Awesome stuff. Well, sounds like you guys are having a really interesting sighting with Jamie. So we won't keep you too long here. But let's take another look at the saddle-billed stork. They're incredibly pretty birds. Almost prehistoric looking in my books. And after its last meal, I'm surprised it waded straight back into the water where now I think it's waiting patiently for potentially another meal. It's probably factoring into its equation the fish eagle sitting nearby, which it knows is going to cause trouble for it. And that's why it appears to have slipped into go slow mode. Interestingly enough, the cheetah managed to successfully catch and kill a duiker, small antelope, and between two male cheetahs they'll probably not take too long to finish it. But it will certainly slow down their movements, and I hope that they'll come onto our property this morning. So that's an update on the two male cheetah to the east of us on Torchwood. Some Franklin calling loudly off to our left. Well, good to hear that Rudy in California and Lady in Gala are both practicing some of the local dialects, and they've said good morning to me. And good morning in the local Xitsonga language is Avushoni. And Goeiemorgen is also good morning, but in Afrikaans. And those are the two words they used to greet us this morning, and very happy to hear you are making an effort on the local language. If and when you guys do ever make it out here, you will blow the staff away if you know just a few words in the local language. So it's a good idea. And the local word for a bird is an inyoni, spelt N-Y-O-N-I, nyoni. very good questions just come through from Donna on Twitter, and she's interested to know, how long do I think it will take for that poor catfish to die within the stomach of the saddle-billed stork? I don't have a clue, Donna, and it would be a difficult procedure to work out, but the digestive juices of the saddle-billed storks are incredibly powerful, and that's why they can swallow their prey whole. So I'm guessing maybe 5 minutes or so it would take to kill that catfish within the very acidic stomach juices, but hopefully less than that. Hard to say though, and if anybody does know the answer to that question, please feel free to share it with us. Like I say, I don't know how you would actually be able to monitor or test how long it takes any given animal to die if it is swallowed alive, because it would require some serious equipment strapped onto that bird. It is important to bear in mind that catfish are incredibly tough animals, especially these sharp-toothed catfish that we get here. They do not die easily. You can take them out of water, they can breathe through regular lungs, almost just like us as humans, so they can breathe in pure oxygen without having to filter it over their gills that they don't have. They actually don't have gills. But yeah, very good point you've raised, but I sadly do not know how long it would take exactly. The fish eagle's just flown off. Let's see if the saddle-billed stork now just changes its mood and decides to continue doing a little bit of hunting. It was a considerable meal it just caught itself. And the majority of the catfish that remain in this puddle are large, about 4 to 5 feet in length. So far too big for the saddle-billed stork to swallow. And this puddle has been filled up ever so slightly from the little bit of rain that we've got so far this year, and we can expect a lot more rain, and this waterhole will hopefully fill up. And LiveSafari is asking, since the little bit of rain we have received, have we noticed an influx in mosquitoes? And yes, LiveSafari, we are being attacked by the mosquitoes. They are here in their numbers, and it's time for us to get the mosquito nets out to keep us free from mosquitoes at night, otherwise you will literally be carried away by them. There's a large amount of them in this area. But thankfully, the Anopheles mosquito, which does carry the malaria, is not very common in this area, so we don't have to worry too much about malaria here. Even though your doctors will tell you this is a malaria area, having worked here for 4.5 years, I know nobody that has contracted malaria in this reserve. And there may be 1 or 2 freak stories, but there typically is not too much here. And the only time I've got malaria is elsewhere in Africa, Mozambique, Tanzania, and Kenya. So I mean, it all depends on whereabouts you go in any given country, but thankfully we don't have that very, very nasty malaria disease. It makes you so weak and ill you cannot believe. So I wouldn't wish anybody got malaria, even my worst enemy. It's a very, very nasty sickness to get. I remember feeling like it was the end of my time here on the planet whilst working out at a very remote camp in Tanzania in the Katavi National Park. And I had to actually send an aeroplane from a very wonderful company called Flying Doctors, and basically anyone who works out in the bush in East Africa, or any tourist that actually comes on holiday in East Africa, is obliged and almost forced to buy into the Flying Doctors scheme. And for a very small fee, you get covered if anything happens to you out in these remote camps, and they'll send out a plane to collect you. And that's what happened in my case. It was a 4.5-hour flight that they had to send a grand caravan from Nairobi, the capital of Kenya, deep into the southern reaches of Tanzania, where they collected me. and flew me back in a flying ambulance, and they raced me into the ICU in the Aga Khan hospital in Nairobi just in time to do what they needed to do to get me back to life. But very nasty memories of that sickness. It was well worth getting it though, because the places that I got to travel and explore in Tanzania where I contracted the malaria were some of the most beautiful places I think on the planet, or at least that I've seen so far. Not too sure what to do. I did have some male leopard tracks, but the roads are so hard at the moment, and I'm not feeling too confident in tracking it down, and the tracks were heading in the direction that we had come from, and it's not an easy area to work around Central Road and Yala Road North. Hard to say which leopard it was. It looked like a large male, but it could have been 15 or maybe. VM's just spotted some WildEarth eagles, just landed up on their nest. From many thousands of kilometers away. Try and get us into a good spot. So these are intra-African migrants. They don't leave Africa during our winter, but they still head far north of the equator. And like I said, isn't it absolutely wonderful that they come back to the same very tree that they nested in last year? These two are easy to distinguish from other Wahlbergs because it's a pair of two pale forms, which is not hugely common. Usually you get a mix paler form. You can see the individual in the nest. Hard to say which is male or female, but one of them is busy doing some housekeeping, and you can see they've actually picked some fresher leaves or branches which actually still have leaves on them. That looks like it could be a guarri branch to lay at the bottom of the nest where they will be laying their eggs shortly. The bird that we could hear calling off in the distance there was a grey-headed bushshrike, an incredibly pretty bird, cousin of the sulphur-breasted bushshrike. I've actually just heard the sulphur-breasted bushshrike calling now. But it's a little bit off in the distance. Great. Good morning, Wendy, and good to have you on board. Wendy would like to further discuss malaria and would like to know whether or not it's true that if you have got malaria once, it could recur at any stage of your life. And that is true, Wendy, but it's only pertains to certain strains of malaria. You get many different types of malaria, and the one that I got is not a recurring one if killed properly, and that was the problem that I faced. I got malaria for the first time and I was treated in a small town called Mwanza on the banks of Lake Victoria in Tanzania, And the hospital that I was in was very, very basic. I had to send the housekeeper who came in and kind of cleaned the ward every morning. You'd give her money to go and buy you food and water off the street. So that was the kind of hospital that I was in. They didn't provide you with food or even water. And I mean, the doctors did a great job in treating me, but I guess they failed in that they did not kill the disease entirely. And 2 weeks after leaving, thinking I was better, it kicked in again. So then I got flown to Nairobi and they treated it properly and killed it off once and for all, and then there were no problems. So that was an example of where people may get confused. It didn't actually recur, it just wasn't killed properly. So certain malaria strains can be completely terminated, but others may come back to haunt you for the rest of your life. So it all depends on where you contract it and which specific strain you contract. Interestingly, the one that is the easiest to treat is the cerebral one, which is the one that I got. So even though it's the one that kills most people in Africa, it is the easiest one to treat. So it responds the best to treatment, whereas other less dangerous ones may respond less well to the treatment, but they are less deadly. I found it remarkable just how quickly I went from feeling okay to feeling like I literally was going to die. Your body loses power at such a dramatic rate that I can understand how and why you do get these horror stories of people dying of malaria, especially in this day and age. A lot of the time it's because of traveling, so people travel abroad and then go back to their home country where they are not used to treating malaria, and their doctors make the mistake of not inquiring as to whether they've been in malaria areas, and therefore don't assume that their patients could have malaria, and are therefore clueless as to how to treat, what to treat. So make sure if you are ever in a malaria area and you do feel sick thereafter, that you tell your doctor that, because I have heard one or two horror stories of people who would have had the financial and medical support needed to fix the disease, but simply through bad luck they didn't work out what was what before the damage was too late. But I think we should get off the gloomy topic of malaria, as it's sending cold shivers down my spine just thinking about the state I was in. Ugh. Happy to hear that Rick and Susie, some of our safari fans in Hawaii, tuned in. I haven't heard you guys send through a question for a while now, and I would like to know if we do any work on the water holes during the dry season, or dredge them, get any of the mud out. And no, there's the only thing that the landowners will do with the water holes is pump water into them. I've never heard of any kind of dredging or remolding of the water holes, but I guess that could vary on the different properties. But as far as I'm aware, the guys usually leave them to their own devices, and it's just the only artificial thing that they may do is pump water into some of them from time to time. Whereas the one here, Juma, wasn't having water pumped into it directly into a smaller, more manageable pond to allow the animals to drink. But now that the rains are coming, they're probably going to stop pumping that smaller water hole and let Mother Nature do the rest of the work. So I'm thinking of heading across to Arathusa. We're not far from our boundary with them. But before we get there, we're going to snoop around and see if we can find any further sign of Sindile, a young male leopard that we saw briefly yesterday afternoon. So those are my plans for now. Hopefully also once we do get closer to Arathusa, we may be able to get an update on their radio frequency as to what's going on over there. There could be some good action unfolding, but we do need to get closer by to confirm that with them. Cheetah, I've just heard of. We're going to take a chance here. There's a very pretty bird. It's flying around wildly, but it looks like it's trying to court a lady. I'm just going to stop here. It's in those green bushes there. Let's see if we get a glimpse of it. They could even be mating if we get really lucky. Oh. No. It's gone, but what I am going to do is find the picture for you in my book very quickly. It was a sunbird, or a pair of sunbirds that were courting, and it was the individual on the top right called the scarlet-chested sunbird. Look at how beautiful that bright red scarlet patch is, and when they are glistening in the sunlight, it is the most incredible coloring you will imagine. The contrast between that bright red and their black feathers is really beautiful. It's difficult to see this little green patch unless the sunlight's perfect. Good. As I was saying though before we took a gamble and tried to show you that bird, was that the cheetah have already finished their duiker kill and are on the move again, but not quite tending west enough to come onto our property. But I just thought I'd update you that they have finished their kill, and it's interesting because cheetah do have to feed very quickly. They know that leopard, hyena and lion, all three of them will try and steal kills from a cheetah. So they are at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to the predators. Just spotted a mushroom growing out of a pile of elephant dung. Awesome. And there will be a lot more mushrooms and various different fungi popping up now that there's some moisture in the air, and they're going to help to decompose and break down a lot of the dung. We'll see a lot more mushrooms sprouting out of elephant dung. To be honest, that actually made me a little bit hungry. It looked delicious, but be warned, you know what you're doing when it comes to ones, because it's toxic to us. Sota is interested to know when we can expect to see the leopard orchids blooming out their flowers. And any time from now, Charlie, we'll have to keep an eye on them for you. And pretty yellow flowers.
Everyone, being out in the bush and being out there live has its technical challenges. We're experiencing some of that now and are working on it as fast as possible to get it sorted and get you back in the vehicle with us.
Welcome back, and we do apologize for some of the technical gremlins that seem to have attacked us. we are working on it and working on fixing everything. It seems to be all up and running. And we've got some friendly neighborhood giraffe here on Triple M. I was actually following the sound of squirrel alarm calls, and we just happened to bump into these three. Hello, big girl. Look at that long tongue. It's so wonderful when you have views like that. You can see their long, long eyelashes. And of course, those are such an important defense mechanism for when they're walking through the bush, to try and make sure that they don't poke their eyes in any way. They do feed on trees with some rather vicious thorns, and you can see how she's tucked her head right in there. So it's important to have an extra level of eye protection. And the wonderful thing that you can see as well is that the sun has come out. And I think we're all very happy to see some sunshine after 2 or 3 rather gloomy days. Not gloomy, but definitely cloudy and cold. And it's brought with it quite a breeze, which is blowing pollen around. And I'm not sure how Genre is doing, but I've been sneezing all morning. Spring has definitely arrived. They are such entertaining animals to watch. Still sitting quietly, just listening to hear if I can hear those squirrel alarm calls again. It all seems to have gone quiet. Triple M. And just to let you know, when I last saw you, we were with the hyenas. But they had disappeared into a very, very thick part of that block, and they were settled somewhere down in there. I didn't want to go crashing in after them to try and relocate them, so we left them alone for the morning. At least we've got lots more time at that den site to look forward to. You can hear the wind coming through, I think just spelling the end of that cold front we had. Actually, along the back of her leg there, let's just have a look at the inside of her. Oh, I think she's going to shift around. I was just looking at all of the ticks that were plaguing her, and I'm quite surprised that these giraffe that we're looking at haven't got any oxpeckers on them. Sort of notable by their absence. Usually you see quite a few of them. Even yesterday with that very, very young baby, we saw lots of oxpeckers around them. I'm not too sure where they've vanished off to. Look at that beautiful mane of hers. Well, Georgianne in Illinois, welcome as always to the Sunrise Safari. Georgianne's picked up on the fact that she's got that injury on her neck just towards the base there. And Georgianne was wondering if females will ever fight each other, and if not, what it was that could have caused that injury. Here we go. That wonderful, graceful walk of hers. For the most part, no, females don't. They might, if another female got a little bit too close to a young calf, the mother might respond by kicking out or lashing out, but they don't fight in any way to defend territories in the same way that males will fight each other for females. So very peaceful animals. That injury on her neck probably came from a very small scratch or something that became infected, and also probably not helped by the oxpeckers, who will not only pick ticks off the skin but also keep injuries open and stop them from healing, and sometimes even make them a little bit bigger. And the other thing that's a possibility is giraffes are quite prone to skin diseases. Some of them get something along the lines, it's a variation of the herpes virus that causes polyps on their skin. What I want to do is shuffle forwards. No, never mind, we've got these lovely cross necks. There's lots of them around. We've got the 3 on the left, and then there's also some more tucked in the bushes off to my right. A lot of them are targeting the brand new green leaves of the knobthorns. And I know that I've mentioned this a few times, but imagine what a treat it must be after eating some of the leaves that are green throughout the winter, although there's not that many, and then dry leaves. It must be so nice to get to the nice green shoots. This one's taken advantage of a knobthorn that's been pushed over by elephants. Let's put it nicely within her reach. And it's so hard for us to fathom how they manage to eat something like a knobthorn. And I've been stuck in knobthorns so many times. They have the most incredibly cruelly hooked thorns that do a wonderful job of piercing the skin at the slightest touch. And yet somehow these giraffes, their mouths are so tough that they can wrap them right around, strip the leaves away with their tongue. Quite phenomenal. Hello, big girl. Now, what I actually wanted to have a look at, there is a female off to the right who is very, very dark. She's going to walk now towards the other female, so hopefully she'll come into the open. But we've spoken a lot about aging giraffe by their colour. I just want to have a look at her as an example, because she's not that big. Even for a female, to me, she looks quite small, and she actually looks quite young. But she's very, very dark in colour. And it's an interesting note to remember that although it is a general rule that giraffes get darker when they age, here she comes, it's not always a steadfast rule, because there can be genetic variance to that as well. Because look how dark she is compared to the others. She doesn't look that old to me. She looks quite young. She's still fairly short. I mean, short is all relative when you're a giraffe, but fairly short for a giraffe. A duet of black-collared barbets. Such graceful animals. The big bull, who's with this group, is slowly coming in our direction. I'm hoping he's going to make his way out into the open. He's just off to my right here. He's quite a large male. I saw his tracks as we were, or at least I think it's his tracks, as we were driving up Vuurtela main access, and I noticed he did have very large feet, but just as a size comparison, he is absolutely massive. Oh, that's one of the biggest giraffes I've seen here. He is going to keep walking, hopefully into the clearer spot. Let me shuffle backwards a little bit, see if we can get a slightly clearer view of him, because he really is quite an impressive specimen. But also I just want to have a look at the way that he walks. Now, we're a little bit far away from the usual area where we see him in, but there is an old giraffe bull about this size, although this one is particularly massive. But there is an old giraffe bull that we've seen a couple of times on drive who's got a rather broken looking ankle. It's very swollen, he can't put any weight on it. And Teresa, good morning and welcome to the Sunrise Safari. You were wondering if I've seen him recently. No, unfortunately Teresa, I haven't. Not for a while. I'm sure he's still around though. He's quite big and more than capable of defending himself, even with that broken ankle. This bull is absolutely huge. He's not even just tall, he's really stocky. He's got an enormous head. And they do continue to grow throughout their lives. But this is quite an impressive specimen we've got here. He's probably, just a guess, I would say he's close to 20 years old. And that head of his probably weighs somewhere close to maybe 10 kilograms, possibly even more, which is 25 odd pounds. You can imagine that kind of weight swung at the end of the momentum of a long neck. It'll have quite the impact. Now I'm going to have to just pull off the road for the moment, just to let one of the other vehicles come past. Although they seem to be stopping to look at the giraffe as well, so we can maybe stay here for the moment. Okay, let me just shift out of the way for Doug. Let him come past. Morning. Good, and you? No, nothing that we found. Just the hyena den.
I know they were looking for shadows on around.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I know that Scott was heading in that direction, so I'm sure he'll follow up.
Alrighty.
Cool. Enjoy, guys. Cheers. Just getting an update from one of the guides, Doug, who works at Simbabili. And he's mentioned that Sindile, or Shadow's cub, they were having a look for him somewhere on Arathusa around Triple M, between Triple M and Parallel Road. Now I know that Scott was in that area. There's been a lot of coming and going with young Shadow's cub. Let's do a swing around, see if we can get one last look at that beautiful big bull. Really is quite extraordinarily large. Wind really picking up now. Let's just just have a look at this big guy. He really is quite enormous. I know he's straight into the sun. I know that Charlie commented that you could probably walk straight under him. I think I probably could actually, if he'd let me. I don't think I'd want to put myself within kicking range of those legs though. Those kicks can be incredibly powerful, so not only swinging that heavy head of his, but they can formidably kick, and they can kick backwards and they can kick forwards. So giraffe are definitely not a defenseless animal. Since we've got this perfect opportunity, or we had this perfect opportunity, I'm hoping is going to stop so we can continue having this opportunity. We've got a really nice look at a big bull here. And Donna, in Canada, you want to know how you tell the difference between males and females. And just quickly, since we have a female head, oh, she's disappearing, and then the male head, have a look at the horns on the top of their heads in comparison. This big bull, he's got really, really thick ossicones, as they're officially called. They're very thick, they're very strong looking, and they're also rubbed bald at the top. We can't see it so well now that he's walking into the sun, but we could earlier. The males have their ossicones rubbed bald, there's no hair on top of them, and that's from using them as a fighting mechanism. Whereas the females are much thinner. They look very much sort of like they're not really weapons at all, and covered in tufts of black hair. And that's one of the big things you're looking for, especially when this is the only view of a giraffe that you have, which is quite common, especially as summer approaches and it starts to get a little bit thicker in the bush. Then the other way is size. There's a considerable difference between a male and a female giraffe in terms of size. The males are probably about 1.5 times the size of the females. They're much, much bigger. And then there is the obvious way. And in giraffe, that is very clearly obvious. The male's testicles are external, so not like something like an elephant or a rhino or a hippo where they are internal. They're external, you can see them very clearly. And if you look at the rounding of the belly, there's a penis sheath that's very clear. So if that's the view, if you can get a nice view of a giraffe out in the open, that's probably the best and easiest way. But then start to look at the shape of the head and the extent of the bone deposits on those ossicones. If they're big and thick, and especially with older males, if they've got that big lump in just above and between their eyes, if that is quite well pronounced, then you're looking at a male. If it's thin, with covered in tufts of hair, then it's a female. One of the easier, nicer animals to tell the difference between the sexes. Gets a little bit more tricky when you're talking about something like a blue wildebeest, especially with young males that can look very similar to females. But giraffe have made it nice and easy. Now I'm peering into the bushes to see if we can get another view of them, but I think they're going to remain tucked away. Let's give it one last go. Take Power Lines Road. Partly because I want to check, but also partly because Triple M is quite a thoroughfare in terms of traffic. And there's lots of oncoming vehicles, so let's try and avoid them and hop onto Power Lines Road. Oh, it's very bright and sunny. Makes such a nice change. Let me get a better view. I'll stop here so we can do a nice comparison. Okay, well, we're going to leave you these giraffes for now and see what Scott's impala are up to. We'll catch up with you later.
Welcome back. And Jamie's doing a wonderful job finding all the animals this morning. Vim and myself have been less fortunate, but that's how it goes. We shot up towards the northwestern corner of Djuma as we had reports of monkeys alarm calling in that area, but when we got there the monkeys were all at peace and couldn't seem to find what it was that got them disturbed. Vim, there's a little morning challenge. There's a raptor floating up in the sky above us, and a beautiful one at that. I got a brief glimpse. It looks to me like it is, oh, it's a male battalier. As it turns around again, if it does, try and look on the underside of its wings and you'll notice that it's half black, half white. One of the easier birds to differentiate the genders between. The female will have a very thin black stripe on the trailing edge, unlike this one, and the majority of her wings will be white underneath. And because they've got such short tails, the battaliers, you'll notice how it's kind of teetering from side to side, and that is a very good characteristic to look for when you see a raptor flying. If it's teetering as much as this one is, you'll be able to take a guess that it is in fact a battalier. Beautiful. It's one of my favorite things to watch. Eagles soaring above us. And while we watch it soar above us, we can answer a question from John in California. He's desperate to know of any updates on Junior, a young male lion in the Nkuhuma pride, and any other members of that pride. And sadly, John, they haven't been seen for quite some time now, and I'm not too sure where they are or what is going on with them. So sadly, no updates there for you. If any of you have heard of where the Nkuhuma pride could be, or a portion thereof, the last that we had heard, they'd actually split up. There were 3 lioness seen together, and Junior was seen with one of the younger lioness on Sibambili, but that was probably 4 or 5 days ago, so not too sure, sadly. We're also hoping to get an update on their movements and where they are, as they are the pride of lion that we have seen more than any other pride, and the fact that we don't know what's going on with them is far from ideal, but that is attributed to the tiny piece of land that we can drive around. We don't have free range on, and that's what limits us in our ability to be able to follow the stories of the animals that we see. It's because they are simply elsewhere. Usually, I mean, we get good updates from the guides at the surrounding camps who can traverse properties where we cannot go, but none of them have got any updates on the Nkuhuma, so I'm guessing maybe they've headed further north into Buffelshoek, where there's less vehicles driving around, or possibly even further north from there into the Manyaleti. It's so wonderful to have the sun poking out through the clouds. It's been almost 2 full days of overcast weather, and this is the first of the sun that we've seen, and all the plant life is going to make the most of this opportunity to get some photosynthesizing in. There was a long-tailed shrike, or a magpie shrike, that we saw temporarily. Oh, we got lucky. Found it in a little gap there. Great work, VM, on camera. You can't confuse this bird with anything else out here. There's nothing that looks similar to it. Very long tail and that white window on its wing. And you can actually hear them calling. Not that one, but there are some others around us calling. But you may be able to hear faintly. Time to peel off a layer. Not doing a very graceful job at the moment. Finally, it is off. It's incredible how quickly it's heating up. On the topic of lions, a question through from Eddie Abbey, and I would like to know if any of the lions in the Sabi Sands have ever been collared for monitoring their movements. And not that I've ever seen, Eddie Abbey. The only animals that I have seen collared within the Sabi Sands are elephants and a buffalo, both of which would have been collared in the Greater Kruger National Park and are simply wandering through their massive home. But that's not to say that lions have not been collared here. It's just in my 4.5 years in total of being here, I've never once seen a collared predator. Sounds like that could change though. There's a chance that Sandile might need to get collared to monitor his progress after the whole rabies and inoculation scandal, but hopefully we will get more information and light on that topic in the coming days, so we can fill everyone in on what exactly is the plans and protocols that need to be followed to ensure that he is okay. But the Sabi Sands management did mention yesterday that there is a chance they would need to collar him. It would make our life very, very easy in finding the animals, having collars on them. But it would detract greatly from the excitement of having to track them down ourselves. And I'm more inclined to leave animals without collars or any radio transmitter. Unless, of course, it's for a good reason. And research on animals is certainly a very, very good reason to collar them. And Lindsay and Houston and Donnery in California are both interested to know a little bit more about Sandile, that leopard that I just mentioned that may need to be collared, and whether he was in fact darted successfully last night. Not that I'm aware of. Haven't heard any further updates on Sandile's movements, and not too sure where he could have ended up after he ran off yesterday. Well, sticking to the theme of this morning's safari, Jamie has found you another animal. So rather than me yabbering on, we're going to send you to see some action. Enjoy.
Welcome back. And no matter where I am in Djuma, somehow the elephants seem to find me over the last 3 days. I certainly wasn't looking for them this morning, but I'm also definitely not complaining. There's nothing like having an eddy coming through to say hello. I saw two when I first pulled into this sighting. Now I've only got visual of this young bull. He looks very familiar. I'm starting to think he might be that young bull that we spent some time with yesterday afternoon on the sunset safari, who quite happily came right up to the vehicle to continue his baboon tail snacking. I think he's going to do the same now. The wind might be making them a little bit unsettled. It is incredibly windy. Here comes the second one at the back. Oh, elephants are always such a nice surprise. I think I'm going to have to switch hats. Mine's attempting to fly off my head. There we go. Nice and out into the open. Looks like two young bulls. Yep, definitely. Now, I'm not sure where the rest of the herd is, but I did get a very strong smell of elephant when I came around here earlier. So these two are probably just following behind. They're right at the cusp of that age where it might be time to start separating themselves from the rest of the herd. He just used his tusks there to shift the broken log out of the way so that he could get down to the fresh stuff underneath it. Oh, big boy. I got asked yesterday about how you know an elephant's relaxed, and I mentioned a lot about reading their body language, and these two are perfectly relaxed. But even that slight swing where he shifted his body in front, he shifted his body round to look at us, that's just a little indication that these two, I think, have been sparring, and he wanted to let me know he's aware of my presence. Two young teenage boys off on an adventure together. One in the front has got very, very long tusks. He's going to be quite big when he grows up. And they're definitely moving fairly determinedly to the west. I think that could well be where the rest of the herd is. I didn't see them, but that could well be where they are. Let's try and loop them quickly and get onto the road ahead of them. There is Impala Road just there, so let's see if we can get round in time and get a nice view of them from the front. What a nice surprise. I've had a couple of very ellie-filled days over the last few days. Are you gentlemen going to stop there now? Looks that way. They've decided that there's food worth snacking on in the middle of the clearing. We don't have to loop them, we can just go up to them. I've had to abandon my hat in the interest of not having it blow straight into the elephants. There we go. See what he's eating there. There's a lot of perennial plants that have just started to sprout again. And the elephants have been taking full advantage of that. Off he goes into the block to join his buddy. Very fast. Imagine how much ground they can cover, and that's quite a gentle walk. I mean, he's not running, he's walking with purpose. Just imagine how fast those strides would take him and how much ground he can cover in a day. Easily 20 kilometers. Those enormous strides, probably in terms of distance from one track to the next, they probably cover, I don't know, about 2 meters if they're going fast. We tend to forget how fast they move because they don't look like they're hurrying along, but with those long legs it happens very quickly. Okay, let's just hop onto the road and loop them. I want to see how they react to the impala as well, or how the impala react to them. Coming through a whole herd of impala that's immediately scattered out of their way. And I have seen elephants before. I have seen them chase impala just for fun, just to keep themselves entertained. They didn't stop to do that in this case. They're still on their mission, probably to catch up with the rest of the herd. Definitely see the purpose in what they're doing. They stop to feed every now and again, but very, very briefly. It's almost like grabbing takeaways as they move. Food on the run. In South Africa we'd call that padkos, I suppose, which is road food, literally translated. Just grabbing snacks whilst they continue on. I'm sure they're trying to catch up with the rest of the herd. They were probably distracted having a bit of a tussle. Nope, this has been a good place to stop for now. Not for long. You can see the restlessness in their body language. They're on a mission somewhere. Try and stay with them for as long as possible. They're approaching quite a thick block that we'd have to quite possibly go around. Let's see if we can stay with them. Maybe just loop around. They've slowed down their frantic march. Not frantic march, but they have definitely slowed down their march. So let's see if we can get around them. Just as we watch him strolling along, Sharon, who is on Twitter, has made a comparison that I didn't ever think I would hear, but I think it's a brilliant one. And she says that the elephant's walk reminds her of John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever, which I think is a valid comparison. And now I'm never going to be rid of that image. Oh, nice! Scott has got a family of warthogs to show you, so let's look at them and be back with you later.
Well, from very large grey beasts to a lot smaller ones. Look at how awesome this is. I don't think I've ever seen this many warthog in one sighting with all of you guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I'm guessing these are the same 9 that get seen at the Arethusa airstrip. We're not hugely far from there at the moment. And it's in all likelihood 2 mothers with their piglets from last year. They've both been incredibly successful. I'm just going to reposition quickly. They've both been incredibly successful mothers, being able to raise all those piglets, and let's hope that they continue to be successful with their next litter. But they should be giving birth to shortly. It'll actually be interesting to look at the adults to see if they are showing signs of pregnancy. But not quite yet, it doesn't appear. It's one animal that I cannot wait to show you. Tiny newborn piglets. They're incredibly cute. And good quality entertainment. They often race around chasing one another, squealing with excitement. And at this time of the year, there's a lot of change in terms of food availability for the herbivores, so we will find a lot of animals moving around, and we'll have some newcomers on the property shortly. Now I'm interested to hang around here because this is the area that we saw Sindile in yesterday, a young male leopard, and imagine if he manages to catch one of these little warthogs. Obviously it'll be bittersweet because we'll be happy for him, but not so fortunate for the warthog. But he was last in this area, and he quite often does hang around in a given area for quite some time before his mother comes to collect him. So let's just drive around and see if he isn't here. Even if we don't see him catch one, we will certainly hear all about it. The warthogs let off very loud squeal if they are caught by anything, so it's quite easy to locate on predators that have been successful warthog hunting. What's that there? Then I spotted a sleepy steenbok, and I'm just going to reverse forward to show you guys. Oh, well spotted. Cute. Incredibly pretty little antelope. And this female's got her ears pinned back, probably because of the heavy wind that she's trying to avoid receiving. Isn't that pretty? Well spotted, Vian. Good work there. Just going to pull over here because there's a game drive vehicle on their way past. I don't want to slow them down to wherever they're trying to get to. It shouldn't be long before they shoot ahead of us. It's Ryan from Arethusa, and we're going to cut back to Jamie though while we continue scratching around for Sindile. Enjoy the ellies, and we will see you shortly. Morning Ryan, morning everyone.
Here's the other one coming. Oh, welcome back. And at the moment, the best visual we have is of the rear end of the elephant. And I remember when I was working at at the research facility I was at before I started working for WildEarth, we used to have to go out and try and identify the individual elephants, and we were trying to update all of the ID kits of them. And for the most part, the parts of the elephant herd that you see the best are their bottoms, not their nice ears or their nice tusks. And eventually one of the interns decided that the best way of identifying elephants would be to spray paint bright pink numbers on their bottoms as a solution. Of course we never did it, but it can be surprisingly tricky when you're going out and you're looking at an elephant herd of 20 individuals or more in a thick block, and you're trying to work out who's there and who isn't. It can get very, very tricky. Elephants can be very unobliging when they want to be. I'm going to reposition now, since we have lost them. I'm really hoping that these two are going to have a bit of a playful moment. They've got that look about them. They are that right age where play fighting occupies a great amount of their day. See if we can't get one last good view of them before they disappear into this block. A bump over a log. It's quite incredible how much warmer it's got. Unbelievable. It's so nice. It makes such a big difference. Come on, Ellies. No, don't disappear again. And just to give you a better idea of what the weather's looking like and how June is looking after the last 2 days of rain, let's cut across to our drone view and see what they're seeing, and I'll be back with you just a bit later. Welcome back, and how amazing is that view? Quite incredible what you can get to see from the sky. And we're still with our ellie bulls. It sounds as though you had amazing stuff. You could see all of the cloud shadows, and they must be moving fairly rapidly in this wind, much like our elephants are doing. Every time we find a nice position, they decide to disappear off further into the block. You can hear the wind gusting. That does have a tendency to make a lot of animals a little bit more uncomfortable, and they tend to veer towards nice thick areas of vegetation to hide themselves away. There you go. move out into the clearing there. Let's just have a look at him there. You can see how much dirt he's got on the top of his back. It's almost made that light colour. It's very clearly loose sand that he's been spraying up. And for ellies, that's a great cooling mechanism as well as catching various parasites. I think it just feels good on their skin. Now the block that these ellies are disappearing off into is getting thicker and thicker. And I'm not going to push too hard to try and stay with them, especially being as close as they are to the Triple M boundary. They're going to move across into Simbambuli very, very soon. But also I don't want to go crashing through after them because I don't want to upset them in any way. With young bulls, they can be a little bit more nervous, not necessarily aggressive, just a little bit more nervous than the older bulls, especially when they're on their own like this. And they would probably just run away from us and continue to move away. Now Sharon from Pittsburgh, welcome to the Sunrise Safari. Sharon was wondering if I've ever been charged by an elephant before, and I have. It's not an ideal experience. I've never had a full-on impact charge, so I've had a couple of serious warning charges from the vehicle. Probably the most trouble I ever had was from an elephant bull named Riffraff, and I've mentioned him before on these safaris. He had a tendency to break into people's gardens and uproot trees, but when he was in must, he tended to be a little bit more aggressive than the other elephants. He was interesting because he was quite a short elephant. He was, in terms of tusk size, he clearly had some of the biggest tusks on the reserve, but he was just quite short and quite stocky, and he had quite an attitude. I wouldn't say attitude problem, he just had quite an attitude. And he charged me once or twice in the vehicle and turned him by hitting the side and shouting at him. And then I had one quite serious charge from a matriarch whose name was Dracula, and she was the daughter of the matriarch Kutile, which means the grumpy one. And Kutile was quite famous before her death for being an aggressive elephant, an aggressive female. And her daughter inherited, not, I wouldn't say aggression, but certainly her spiritedness. And Dracula charged me once. I was out on foot walking. I accidentally the elephants came up out of the river. I came into the clearing with the group of guests that I had. And we just kind of met in the middle and took each other by surprise. And she did come hurtling down the road. But it was a very noisy charge. It was ears out, trunk flapping, lots of screaming, which can seem very scary, but I would definitely have been more on edge if she'd come quietly with ears tucked back. And again, actually with that sighting, I shouted at her and tapped my leg and then clapped at her to try and stop her, and she did stop, and then she kept coming. And in the end what I did, and it was kind of just an instinctive reaction, because all of my guests luckily was safely up on a rocky area, so they had really nice safe position, I actually dropped down onto my haunches. It was entirely instinctive in that circumstance. It could have gone either way, but she immediately stopped. It immediately took the threat level away from her. She relaxed completely. It's just that immediate submissive posture that she took to mean that I wasn't a threat anymore, and she turned away and she led her family away from us. And the only reason she was giving me that serious warning charge was because she was ahead of us, but the rest of her herd were kind of off to the side of us, so it was almost like we were going to cut in between them. And she wasn't happy with that situation, especially with young babies. And those are the charges that I've experienced, or probably some of the more interesting charges I've experienced. Now, I do know that there was an elephant charge a couple of months ago, and you were also wondering if Wendy still bears the scars of those tusks. We're in Jigga at the moment, but yes, Wendy does indeed still have 2 perfectly elephant tusk width holes in the side of her. I did hear about it, and I have seen the video of that particular incident. Fortunately, still nothing has happened since then, but an important reminder. I always look at those holes and just use them as an important reminder as to the power and the respect that you need to have for the elephants out here. Our bulls have disappeared off into the block. I'm just peering in to see if I can see them. I can hear them moving off. It seems as though in all of the excitement we've all lost complete track of time, and we seem to be drawing to the close of the sunrise safari. I had absolutely no idea. I would have been quite happy to keep prattling on for the next few minutes. But a brilliant morning. We've got time to spend with those hyenas, which is so exciting. I'm enjoying that tremendously, and I'm so happy that we've relocated the den. Anyway, a big thank you to Jeandre for all of his fantastic camera work, especially with hyenas darting everywhere and then practically trying to climb into the vehicle with us. And a big thank you to you, the viewers, for all of your questions and your interactions. That's what makes these live safaris so much fun. And to the lovely ladies in FC, I still haven't managed to get, I can see clearly now the rain is gone, out of my head. So thank you for that at the start of drive. Big thanks to Jess and Nikki. Let's see what Scott's up to for the last minute of this sunrise safari, and we will catch up with you this afternoon.
Welcome back. William and I spent some more time in that area, hoping to find some dealer, but came up with nothing. Might be worth heading back there this afternoon for another check. A big thank you to Kathy Sparks for reminding us that the safari was coming to a close, otherwise we all would have forgotten and lost track of time. So thank you very much. And we've got an awesome opportunity here to get eye level with a millipede. It's an absolute monster, and I'm going to say my thank yous and goodbyes now as we enjoy the sighting. And my first thank you is going to go to Jamie for finding all the animals and conducting the majority of the sunrise safari, as well as to Jess and Nikki in the final control room, VM on camera, and last but certainly not least, all of you guys for joining in the show. It makes it so special to have you with us, and look forward to heading out this afternoon again. Enjoy the views of this millipede. Look at those legs, and we will see you all a little bit later.